What's up, everybody? This is the Hedge Mage, and we are back again for another Popper video, doing another report on what transpired at Friday Night Magic this last week and what deck I was playing. Uh, so if you are interested in hearing about that, definitely stick around as I'll be going over the deck, like a quick overview of everything that I'm running, as well as going over what matches I had and how those went. As always, if you would like to support the channel, if you could leave a like on this video and hit that subscribe button, I would greatly appreciate it. And with that out of the way, let's get into what I was playing at Friday Night Magic. So as you know, my LGS or my local game store hosts a Popper event for Friday Night Magic. Basically, it's one of the few events that they can actually get enough people to show up for, which I'm pretty happy about since Popper is my favorite format and it's a one that I play pretty much exclusively. So this week I decided to bring Mono Blue Fairies. It's been a long time since I had played the deck, and we actually did do fairly well this week. I think my record was 2-1. And so let's take a look at what I brought. I haven't actually updated this list much in a little bit, but it's still fairly strong. So it pretty much probably, if you are familiar with the format, it's definitely a lot of stuff you have seen before. But yeah, let's get into it. So in the main deck, I got 4 copies of Fairy Seer, 4 Spell Stutter Sprites, 2 Snare Master Sprites, 4 copies of Fairy Miscreant. Also, am running 1 Brine Barrow Intruder, 4 copies of Ninja of the Deep Hour, 4 copies of Moon Circuit Hacker. So our 8 ninjas there. And then now we're getting into the spells. So a lot of interaction. We got 1 copy of Spell Stutter, which has been somewhat of an experiment. It has paid off at times. It's kind of like the fifth counter spell essentially, since if I have 2 other fairies out, it's counter target spell unless they pay 5 mana, which can not no one's really gonna have that kind of resource available. Well, some decks might, but very few would. Maybe Tron would, so definitely something you'd want to side out against Tron. Then I'm running 1 copy of Force Spike, another big pet card of mine, but no one ever really sees it coming. Also, really love this printing from Legends, so I love those old cards. All right, and then we got 4 copies of Mutagenic Growth and 4 Counterspell and 4 copies of Snap. And then I got 4 copies of One Mind, which is generally just a 1 mana draw 2 spell. So very useful card for the deck. And then I got 1 copy of Smoke Shroud to kind of get some more damage in with our ninjas. There's a lot of really fun lines with this card. And then in our mana base, I got 1 Lonely Sandbar, which is really great when we're flooding out. And the rest are all basic islands. So in the sideboard, what I brought in 3 Tormod scripts, which I have liked in the past, though recently now I have been thinking more about upgrading it to relics because they're just so much better, especially with all the different terror decks that are currently being played right now. And then we got 1 copy of Dispel. I brought in 1 Curfew, 1 Sunken City, 4 copies of Blue Elemental Blast, and 1 Spell Pierce, and 4 copies of Annul. All right, and so let's talk about the matchups. I had a couple pretty tough matchups. My first one was against a home-brewed blue-white or Azorius Boggles deck, which was pretty tough since pretty much a lot of the answers that I have outside of counter spells are playing Snap and just tempoing them out, bouncing their creatures, but I cannot bounce a Boggle since it has hexproof, so it cannot be targeted. So that is pretty rough. So I had to really be very cautious with holding back and making sure I had mana available to play a counter spell on, certain enchantments that I really did not want to hit the field. Not only that, because they were running blue, they were running security bypass, which meant they had unblockable boggles that they would usually give it life link and lots of other things like ethereal armor and all that glitters. So pretty pretty tough match if I don't have an answer for, certain enchantments or auras right away. But anyways, we did play 3 games. Let's see. I think I won the first game, and they won the second, and it really came down to the perfectly placed counterspell at the end of the game. I think I was down to 3 life, and I had just enough damage and flyers on the board to get them down to 0. Yeah, so I really won that game kind of by the skin of my teeth. So it was a very, very sweaty game, but a ton of fun. So we did win that one. Game 2 or match 2, I played against um, Mono Red Koldatha, which is definitely a pretty classic matchup for the game. It is tempo versus aggro. And I won that match in 2. So I basically had the right answer every single time, was able to get enough board presence even when they were blowing up my creatures. I was able to keep the pressure on and draw into just the right things. So everything was going well there. And for the final match, I got to play against Mono Blue Terror. I won the first game. I was able to outvalue them the first one, but in the second one, I made an early game mistake in on game 2 that completely threw the match in their favor. So essentially, there was a moment where I, w- I was getting a lot of the fairies and ninjutsuing them back to my hand, and I got a little greedy, and I decided to replay. It was either a fairy seer or a fairy miscreant, leaving me tapped out. Even though I did have a 4 spike in hand, they were only on 4 islands at that point. And on their turn, they played Murmuring Mystic, and I did not have any interaction for it. And after that got onto the field, there was no winning for us. Murmuring Mystic is such a huge answer to fairies. It is ridiculous. That card is insanely powerful. So I definitely learned a huge lesson in that matchup. And looking back at it, I should have held up 1 island since they would have never seen that 4 spike coming because no one truly ever does. And so we did. So they did win game 2. So we went to game 3, and game 3 was more Murmuring Mystics coming on the field when I did not have a counterspell available for it. And then, in come the Cryptic Serpents, and the game is pretty much decided. I had no good attacks because of their flyers, and they were some very grindy games. We did go to time in the round on the last one, and obviously they won. My opponent played a very, very good game. I definitely learned a lot from that match and making sure that if they are untapping on 4 lands, that I must make sure that I have a counterspell available or have an answer to Murmuring Mystic, as it is a card that completely destroys our our deck or mono blue fairies. But all in all, it was a great time at Friday Night Magic. I always love going there. The all the players were are always a really good time to play with. Everyone has a really good sense of sportsmanship at this store, so it was a great time. But anyways, that's going to do it for today's video, guys. As always, there will be a link to my full list for mono blue fairies in the description below. I do plan on switching some things up, especially after this last run with it a little bit. So there might be some tweaks that may not reflect exactly what I just briefly went over in this video. That being said, I hope everyone is having a wonderful day, and I will see you all next time.